Welcome to the Arabian Nights. We are in the 19th night. The king spared Scheherazade life while she is delighting him with wonderful stories. And so we continue. Scheherazade told how the demon took the old fisherman to the hidden lake and ordered him to cast his net and fish those magical colored fish. And when he pulled and found those colored fishes, he was full of admiration and delight. The demon said to him, "Take them to the king of your city and offer them to him, and he will give you enough to make you rich. And remember, don't fish here more than once a day." Then he disappeared into the ground. The fisherman returned to the city, still marveling at his encounter with the demon and at the colored fish. He entered the royal palace, and when he presented the fish to the king and the king saw that they were colored, he took one of them in his hand and looked at it with great amazement. Then he said to his vizier, "Take them to the cook whom the emperor of Byzantium has given us as a present." The vizier took the fish and brought them to the girl and said to her, "Girl, the king has been presented these 4 fish, and he bids you fry them well." Then the vizier went back to report to the king, and the king ordered him to give the fisherman 400 dirhams. The vizier gave the money to the fisherman, who, receiving it, gathered it in the folds of his robe and went away, running, and as he ran he stumbled and kept falling and getting up, thinking that he was in a dream. Then he stopped and bought some provisions for his family. In the meantime, the girl scaled the fish, cleaned them, and cut them into pieces. Then she placed the frying pan on the fire and poured in the sesame oil, and when it began to boil, she placed the fish in the frying pan. When the pieces were done on one side, she turned them over, but no sooner had she done this than the kitchen wall split open, and there emerged a maiden with a beautiful figure, smooth cheeks, perfect features, and dark eyes. She wore a short-sleeved silk shirt in the Egyptian style, embroidered all around with lace and gold spangles. In her ears she wore dangling earrings. On her wrists she wore bracelets, and in her hand she held a bamboo wand. She thrust the wand into the frying pan and said in clear Arabic, O fish, have you kept the pledge?" When the cook saw what had happened, she fainted. Then the maiden repeated what she had said, and the fish raised their heads from the frying pan and replied in clear Arabic, "Yes, yes. If you return, we shall return. If you keep your vow, we shall keep ours. And if you forsake us, we shall be even." At that moment, the maiden overturned the frying pan and disappeared as she had come, and the kitchen wall closed behind her. When the cook came to herself, she found the 4 fish charred, and she felt sorry for herself and afraid of the king, saying to herself, "He broke his lance on his very first raid." While she remonstrated with herself, the vizier suddenly stood before her, saying, "Give me the fish, for we have set the table before the king, and he is waiting for them." The girl wept and told the vizier what she had seen and witnessed, and what had happened to the fish. The vizier was astonished and said, "This is very strange." Then he sent an officer after the fisherman, and he returned a while later with the fisherman. The vizier shouted at him, saying, "Bring us at once 4 more fish like the ones you brought us before, for we have had an accident with them." When he followed with threats, the fisherman went home and, taking his fishing gear, went outside the city, climbed the mountain, and descended to the wilderness on the other side. When he came to the lake, he cast his net, and when he pulled up, he found inside 4 fish, as he had done the first time. Then he brought them back to the vizier, who took them to the girl and said, "Fry them in front of me so that I can see for myself." The girl prepared the fish at once, placed the frying pan over the fire, and threw them in. When the fish were done, the wall split open, and the maiden appeared in her elegant clothes, wearing necklaces and other jewelry, and holding in her hand the bamboo wand. Again she thrust the wand into the frying pan and said, in dear Arabic, "O fish, have you kept the pledge?" And again the fish raised their heads and replied, "Yes, yes. If you return, we shall return. If you keep your vow, we shall keep ours. And if you forsake us, we shall be even." But morning overtook Scheherazade, and she lapsed into silence. Then Dinarzade said, "What an incredible story!" Scheherazade replied, "What is this compared with what I shall tell you tomorrow night if I live?" The 20th night. The following night, Dinarzade said to her sister Scheherazade, "Please, sister, if you are not sleepy, tell us one of your lovely little tales to while away the night." Scheherazade replied, "With the greatest pleasure. I heard, O happy king, that after the fish spoke, the maiden overturned the frying pan with the wand and disappeared into the opening from which she had emerged, and the wall closed behind her. The vizier said to himself, "I can no longer hide this affair from the king." And he went to him and told him what had happened to the fish before his very eyes. The king was exceedingly amazed and said, "I wish to see this with my own eyes." Then he sent for the fisherman, who came after a little while, and the king said to him, "I want you to bring me at once 4 more fish like the ones you brought before. Hurry." Then he assigned 3 officers to guard the fisherman and sent him away. The fisherman disappeared for a while and returned with 4 fish, 1 red, 1 white, 1 blue, and 1 yellow. The king commanded, "Give him 400 dirhams," and the fisherman, receiving the money, gathered it in the folds of his robe and went away. Then the king said to the vizier, "Fry the fish here in my presence." The vizier replied, "I hear and obey." And he called for a stove and a frying pan and sat to clean the fish. Then he lit the fire and, pouring the sesame oil, placed the fish in the frying pan. When they were almost done, the palace walls split open, and the king and vizier began to tremble. And when they looked up, they saw a black slave who stood like a towering mountain or a giant descendant of the tribe of Ad. He was as tall as a reed, as wide as a stone bench, and he held a green palm leaf in his hand. Then, in clear but unpleasant language, he said, O fish, have you kept the pledge?" And the fish raised their heads from the frying pan and said, "Yes, yes. If you return, we shall return. If you keep your vow, we shall keep ours, and if you forsake us, we shall be even." At that moment, the black slave overturned the frying pan in the middle of the hall, and the fish turned into charcoal. Then the black slave departed as he had come, and the wall closed behind him. When the black slave disappeared, the king said, "I cannot sleep over this affair, for there is no doubt a mystery behind these fish." Then he bade the fisherman be brought before him again. When the fisherman arrived, the king said to him, "Damn you, where do you catch these fish?" The fisherman replied, "My lord, I catch them in a lake that lies among 4 hills, on the other side of the mountain." The king turned to the vizier and asked, "Do you know this lake?" The vizier replied, "No, by God, your majesty. For 60 years I have hunted, travelled, and roamed far and wide, sometimes for a day or 2, sometimes for a month or 2, but I have never seen or known that such a lake existed on the other side of the mountain." Then the king turned to the fisherman and asked him, "How far is this lake from here?" The fisherman replied, "King of the age, it is 1 hour from here." The king was astonished, and he ordered his soldiers to be ready. Then he rode out with his troops behind the fisherman, who led the way under guard, muttering curses on the demon as he went. They rode until they were outside the city. Then they climbed the mountain. And when they descended to the other side, they saw a vast wilderness that they had never seen in all their lives, as well as the 4 hills, and the lake in whose clear water they saw the fish in 4 colors, red, white, blue, and yellow. The king stood marveling. Then he turned to the vizier, princes, chamberlains, and deputies and asked, "Have any of you ever seen this lake before?" They replied, "Never." He asked, "And none of you knew where it was?" They kissed the ground before him and replied, "By God, your Majesty, till now we have never in our lives seen this lake or known about it, even though it is close to our city." The king said, "There is a mystery behind this. By God, I shall not return to the city until I find the answer to the mystery behind this lake and these fish in 4 colors." Then he ordered his men to halt and pitch the tents, and he dismounted and waited. When it was dark, he summoned the vizier, who was an experienced and wise man of the world. The vizier came to the king without being seen by the soldiers, and when he arrived, the king said, "I wish to reveal to you what I intend to do. At this very hour, I shall go all by myself to look for an answer to the mystery of this lake and these fish. Early tomorrow morning you shall sit at the entrance of my tent and tell the princes that the king is indisposed and that he has given you orders not to let anyone be admitted to his presence. You must not let anyone know about my departure and absence, and you must wait for me for 3 days." The vizier, unable to disobey him, abided by the order, saying, "I hear and obey." Then the king prepared himself, and girded himself with the royal sword. Then he climbed one of the 4 hills, and when he reached the top, he journeyed on for the rest of the night. In the morning, when the sun rose and steeped the mountain top with light, the king looked and sighted a dark mass in the distance. When he saw it, he was glad, and he headed in its direction, saying to himself, "There may be someone there to give me information." He journeyed on, and when he arrived, he found a palace built under a lucky star, with black stones and completely overlaid with iron plates. It had double doors, one open, one shut. Pleased, the king knocked gently at the door and waited patiently for a while without hearing any reply. He knocked again, this time more loudly than before, but again waited without hearing any reply or seeing anyone. He knocked for the 3rd time and kept knocking repeatedly, but once more waited without hearing any reply or seeing anyone. Then he said to himself, "There is no doubt that there is no one inside, or perhaps the palace is deserted." Summoning his courage, he entered and shouted from the hallway, "Any inhabitants of the palace, I am a stranger and a hungry traveler. Have you any food? Our Lord will requite you and reward you for it." He shouted a 2nd and a 3rd time, but heard no reply. Feeling bold and determined, he advanced from the hallway into the center of the palace and looked around, but saw no one. But morning overtook Scheherazade, and she lapsed into silence. Then Dinarzade said, "Sister, what an amazing and entertaining story." Scheherazade replied, "What is this compared with what I shall tell you tomorrow night if I live?" The 21st night, Scheherazade continued alive and telling the story to the king. "I heard, my lord, that the king of the story walked to the center of the palace he found and looked around but saw no one. The palace was furnished with silk carpets and leather mats and hung with drapes. There were also settees, benches, and seats with cushions, as well as cupboards. In the middle there stood a spacious courtyard, surrounded by 4 adjoining recessed courts facing each other. In the center stood a fountain, on top of which crouched 4 lions in red gold, spouting water from their mouths in droplets that looked like gems and pearls, and about the fountain singing birds fluttered under a high net to prevent them from flying away. When the king saw all this, without seeing anyone, he was astonished and regretted that he found none to give him any information. He sat pensively by one of the recessed courts when he heard sad moans and lamentations and the following verses. "My soul is torn between peril and toil. O life, dispatch me with one mighty blow. Lover, neither a bankrupt nor a nobleman, humbled by love's law do you pity show. Even from the breeze I jealously used to guard you. but at the blow of fate, the eyes blind go. When, as he pulls to shoot, the bowstring breaks, what can the bowman facing his foes do? And when the foes begin to congregate, how can he then escape his cruel fate? When the king heard the lamentation and the verses, he rose and moved toward the source of the voice until he came to a doorway behind a curtain. And when he lifted the curtain, he saw at the upper end of the room a young man sitting on a chair that rose about 20 inches above the floor. He was a handsome young man with a full figure, clear voice, radiant brow, bright face, downy beard, and ruddy cheeks graced with a mole like a speck of amber. The king greeted the seated young man, pleased to see him. The young man wore a long-sleeved robe of Egyptian silk with gold embroidery, and on his head he wore an Egyptian conical head covering, but his face showed signs of grief and sorrow. When the king greeted him, the young man greeted him back courteously and said, "Pardon me, sir, for not rising, for you deserve even a greater honor." The king replied, "Young man, you are pardoned. I myself am your guest, having come to you on a serious mission. Pray tell me the story behind the lake and the colored fish, as well as this palace and the fact that you sit alone and mourn with no one to console you." When the young man heard this, his tears began to flow over his cheeks until they drenched his breast. Then he sang the following Mawalia verses. "Say to the man whom life with arrows shot, how many men have felt the blows of fate? If you did sleep, the eyes of God have not. Who can say time is fair and life in constant state?" Then he wept bitterly. The king was astonished and asked, "Young man, why do you cry?" The young man replied, "Sir, how can I refrain from crying in my present condition?" Then he lifted the skirt of his robe, and the king saw that while one half of the young man, from the navel to the head, was human flesh, the other half, from the navel to the feet, was black stone. I heard, O king, that when the king saw the young man in this condition, he felt very sad and sorry for him, and said with a sigh, "Young man, you have added one more worry to my worries. I came to look for an answer to the mystery of the fish in order to save them, but ended up looking for an answer to your case as well as the fish. There is no power and no strength save in God the Almighty. Hurry up, young man, and tell me your story." The young man replied, "Lend me your ears, your eyes, and your mind." The king replied, "My ears, my eyes, and my mind are ready." The young man said, "This is my story.